Hmm.
Okay. This is just a basic introduction of Require. This will be a couple of additional parts to a series, but this is my first attempt. But Require.js is basically a JavaScript library. And when I came across the website, it doesn't really give you as much information as I thought it did. So this is the definition that's on the website when you first go to require.js.org. Require.js is a JavaScript file and module loader. It is optimized for an in-browser use, but it can be used in other JavaScript environments like Rhino and Node. Using modular script loader like Require.js will improve the speed and quality of your code. So when I read that initially, I'm just like, okay, that means absolutely nothing to me. But when I what I took from it was it is a JavaScript library. It is used to load JavaScript files, and it's a module loader. And it improves the speed and quality of your site. Why should I care? If you look at this as a freelance designer slash front end developer, we get a lot of sites like this. We start off, we have our jQuery, Bootstrap, all of that stuff piled on top on script tags on the top and our header tags. Very familiar looking, right? Yes. So what Require.js does, it changes this into this, which is the exact same thing, except you're using Require.js to load all of those files. Now, this require your first common file. So I'll go over to the example, because if you're anything like me, if it doesn't mean anything if I read it, I have to go immediately to the examples. So I'll head on over right now. Where are my examples? No. So if you go to require.js.org, you'll have a list of examples, and you download those examples. This particular one I downloaded for the use of this application. So the first thing you do is download require.js, and this is not the minified version of it. It's commented version. So you can see they have all the comments that are necessary, but that is the initial file that you need to download. When you do that, this is the file that kind of put things in perspective for the application. You have require.js.config. This is where require.js lives. So if you open this folder, it lives right here. And you define your paths underneath that. That is what the main job of the common.js file. So page one, instead of that gigantic list of things, of JS files, the load, you have your require.js file here and this data main. This data main tells us, let's see, this this main file tells us where we're going to get our applications from. So page one loads main1.js, and in that file is where you define what pages or what JS files will load for that particular page. So you have jQuery and your lib. On page two, you have your jQuery, but you also have your UI. Bower.js just for that particular page. So why are we using this? Because it looks exactly the same, right? Because you have hundreds of files that you're still loading. But as we move forward in web development, websites are turning more into web apps. If you look at apartmentguide.com is a Ruby app, a functioning Ruby app that's displayed on the browser. So and also we have, if you use PHP or Ruby, you have partials, and on those applications sharing layouts per page. You cannot load. Require.js to me is important because you can load specific JS for specific pages, even if they're sharing layouts. The code complexity for sites are getting bigger, and assembly for a monstrous site like AG or rentals are getting harder and harder. So if we use Require.js, like I said, what makes it important is that the pages that are not using a particular JavaScript file, you don't have to load it through your main layout or in the header tag of that main layout. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to jump in.
So wait, that whole lib file, you can put the calls to that in anything basically as a script tag.
You mean here?
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little. So the common config thing points to the require file itself, or where everything else lives, like path.
This is the path to the require.js. This is the path to everything else.
So you would put all of your JS files in the app.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, initially, yes.
Okay.
But also, you can specify which pages use that on their individual JS pages. Okay. So if you want to define a certain UI.js file for particular pages, you can specify that in this way. Let's see. So for an example, I can give you another example. I was looking at my last app, rentals.com, and let me get it out for you. Rentals, Sublime. Okay, if you look at rentals, and you go down to the very app views, you see how each one of these share a specific layout, each page. So and they also, within each different page, they have partials for those pages. So what Require does, even if you have a state lander or a thank you page, all JavaScript are not running. We're not running certain JavaScript applications on those particular pages. So you use Require to filter it out. And the way that it makes it run faster is that if you're not using that page, you don't have to download. The particular device does not have to download that JavaScript. So yeah, that was just a brief introduction of what Require.js is and why it's important for not just back-end developers, but front-end developers too. And as I get more and more into it, I can be more in depth with my tutorials and kind of build out some things, and I'll add it on GitHub for you guys to download, look through.
Does anybody here understand Bower as well? I always hear that.
That's my next thing. I don't think rentals Let's see. I think rentals uses Bower.
Yeah, it does use Bower to
Yeah, it does.
install like dependent packages and also some of our own JavaScript packages. Like in the root of the app, there's this Bower.json that you can check out that kind of wires up all the dependent packages.
Hey, Luke has some things to add on Bower. I'm gonna send him a link.
Okay. I know that he was working on that quite a bit because I had to do a Bower install to get it running, get rentals running initially. A package manager. Okay.
Yeah, so like basically instead of manually downloading, some jQuery module or something, you can just say that's one of the things we depend on. Bower, install it, and it's mainly what it's cool for.
Okay. In the future, I just want to take rentals.com and kind of rip it apart and see what actually. I know it uses like a bunch of different things like React and Bower and Require, and it's basically our web applications are really complex, and just want to get more involved in the processes, build it. So that's my tech talk. If you guys want a copy of any of the slides or a link to this, I was more nervous than I thought. If you guys want a link or whatever, I'll send it out to you later. Anybody have anything to add?
Can you guys hear me?
Sure.
Is my voice levels are my voice levels okay?
There's some feedback.
Joey, mute yours.
Yep.
Yeah, I had one thing to add about Require.js that I feel is kind of particularly important, and you may have scraped over this a little bit, but the idea is that when a web page gets rendered, you start with the head tags, and basically, like the way the browser renders a page is it goes from the top down. Require.js out of the box is asynchronous. So you'll run into this kind of buzzword or acronym every now and then. AMD stands for asynchronous module definition.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you have a new Require.js file that kind of lays out like a particular set of features or adds something new to the app, it's important to understand that the way Require.js is set up is that one, it allows you to abstract a lot of things into individual pieces, and then two is it allows you to kind of have something set up to where you're basically waiting for all of your dependencies to load before running the script that depends on those dependencies. And it does all of this in a non-blocking way, meaning your web page is free to render everything that's in the body tag without having to wait for that JavaScript to catch up. I can show you guys a pretty easy to understand example if I can actually share my screen right here. Hold on, let's see.
Sure.
So in AG, we have a bunch of Require modules. We rely on Require.js across all of our apps. Let's see. Take a look at. Let's find one that's not a CoffeeScript, so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay, so here's one called ellipsis.js, and then this basically is just a jQuery extension that allows you to ellipsify text. So if there's not a room, it'll make it so that it's like the text has a ... after it.
Right.
Basically what this is saying is it says wait for jQuery to load and then run and execute all of the code that's in here. The reason that's necessary is because in order to extend jQuery and create a jQuery extension, you obviously need jQuery defined, which is defined on this $sign right here. So basically with a require shell, you basically just have this define block that's at the top, and then a callback function. And all that's saying is wait for everything to load, all of this array of dependencies to load, and then execute everything that's in the middle. This is really convenient when it comes to optimizing pages, not only for allowing you to decouple certain bits and pieces of your JavaScript so that it's only pertinent to specific pages or maybe a specific feature like a sidebar or a gallery, but also because it allows you to wait for all of the dependencies to load in a non-blocking way, because browsers are by default blocking. If you have a script tag in your head tags, it's going to wait for everything in that script tag to load before it allows the rest of the page to render. And if you keep talking about scripts on top of scripts on top of scripts, that could lead to really, really slow performance in your web page. Right. This allows you to set up everything so that the rest of your page is free to render while your JavaScript is loading asynchronously. It's kind of happening in the background. And then speaking to Bower and init, or speaking to Bower, and if you guys have any questions on usage for that, it's really, really simple. Bower uses Node. It's basically a Node package, and which is, I guess in layman's terms, it's just server-side JavaScript, but it allows you to do really cool things with your computer, like interact with the file system and things like that you wouldn't normally be able to do with plain old JavaScript that executes in the browser. One example we can do is like test Bower. I'll just make a directory called test. Oh, wait. Make a directory called test Bower, and then we could do Bower install jQuery. So this is, oh, whoops. Let me go into that directory really quick. So if we just run Bower install jQuery, what's going to happen is Bower is going to fetch the latest version of jQuery and install it.
Nice.
So now if I do ls, we can see that by default Bower installs to a vendor directory, and inside of that there's another folder called Bower. And now I've got the jQuery source code. This is really convenient for managing dependencies project across project. Normally what you would have is a file like an AG called a Bower.json file. So what happens is it basically reads this file, it just sits in the root and it's just JSON, and you list out all of your dependencies and their versions. Really convenient because as jQuery continues to be like a work in progress and as new major versions and minor versions come out and get released, sometimes you can have features disappear. One such example is like jQuery 187, I think, supports a function called jQuery.browser or something like that. Like it's something that looks like this, and then in 1.9 that completely disappears. So any app that uses that function, or any piece of JavaScript that uses that function, will end up breaking because it'll say function is no longer defined. Bower is a really convenient way for you to outline your dependencies and then the versions for those dependencies. So you'll see for AG, we've actually got it locked at version 1.8.3. And that's unfortunate because I think that version of jQuery is about 2 or 3 years old. And from what I understand, there's been a lot of like speed optimizations and things like that that have kind of happened in the last few years with jQuery that make the newer versions a lot more favorable. A lot of the reasons for that are backwards compatibility with Internet Explorer 7, and if we still support 7, I think we might support as low as 7. It might be 8 though, but jQuery has actually dropped support for versions I think lower than 8 in versions 2+. So we're still using an older version of jQuery. But really, it's as simple as that. If you want to install a dependency for your project, it's just Bower install dependency name. In this case, I could even do underscore, and it would install the underscore library. The thing is, though, that not every piece of JavaScript out there is a jQuery package. So in some cases, what you can do is not a Bower package. You define a Bower package by having that Bower.json basically sit in the root of your project. So like let's say you came out with a great jQuery extension for formatting dates. You would basically have a Bower.json within that repository that basically specifies the name of the package and any of its dependencies. So when you run Bower install Ginger's new date formatter, basically what it's going to do is it's going to grab Ginger's new date formatter and then all of those dependencies as well.
Okay.
And you can edit also, let me just add, you can edit the default install directory. I think by default Bower does install the vendor Bower, but there's a .bower.rc, and that stands for runtime configuration. And so anytime you run a Bower, it'll install to whatever is outlined in this Bower.rc file. So in this case, for this particular package, SEM campaign, it's set to vendor Bower. And I actually think that's the default as well. I prefer having it set to vendor Bower because there's packages like Bootstrap that include CSS files as well as JavaScript files. So by naming it vendor Bower, you get something that's a lot, I feel like, cleaner, because vendor JavaScript in itself kind of denies the fact that you're going to be pulling down any CSS code. We know with Twitter Bootstrap, because that's a Bower package, it's not just JavaScript you can pull down, it's CSS libraries as well. And same goes for Foundation, Pure CSS, Zerb, and all of that stuff. So it's not just JavaScript that you can pull down and install. But that's about as complex as Bower is. It's really, really not complex at all. Do Bower list. If you ever have questions about like what's capable of the command line utility, you can just do Bower-H for help, and it'll basically tell you everything you can do. If you're working on a local package and perhaps modifying it, you can run Bower link to point to that package if it's in another directory and it's not an online resource yet. You can do Bower search to search for packages. So it's basically like Google from your command line. If I do Bower search jQuery, I'm sure I'll get a lot of stuff back, and I do. I get a shitload of stuff back. jQuery eraser, jQuery up, down, etc. I mean, I just get back so much stuff. And then you can do Bower list, finally, to list all of the dependencies that are inside of your current package. This itself, SEM campaign, is just a Require.js module that also happens to be a Bower package. And it depends, as we can see here, on Everest.js, jQuery, and jQuery.cookie. Because it has those dependencies, you'll want to make sure that you list them in your Bower.json file. And again, not always do these things have to be Bower packages. You can download just plain old JavaScript files with Bower now. So you can point directly to a URL, like we're doing in this case. We're saying download a package called Everest.js and make sure that we're downloading that from this URL. And you can see this is just plain old JavaScript. There's really nothing fancy about it. It's not a Git repo. It doesn't have a Bower.json outlined. You can set it up to where it's pointing to specific branches of jQuery. So like not only the latest jQuery code, but also maybe a test branch. Maybe you want to submit a pull request against jQuery and change how it works or make it faster or something like that. You can point these things to specific branches, URLs, etc. So about Bower, like I said, it's fairly easy. If you have any questions about it, there's great documentation out there, but the best thing you can do is just npm install Bower-g, which I'm sure all of you guys have already done. And this just means, this -g, it just means allow me to run the Bower command from the command line anywhere, no matter where I happen to be. If we didn't specify installing Bower with that -g, it would get installed to a node modules folder. And the binary, and when I say binary, I just mean the command that you execute from the command line interface would get executed from there. But just Bower-H, and you can basically see everything that this tool is capable of. We use it on deploys, so when we basically ignore from our repository all of the Bower dependencies. But on deploy, what we end up doing is running Bower install. So we'll basically take all of our files for our app, SSH into like the CI box, for example, clone over the app, and then gather all of the JavaScript dependencies by running Bower install on the server. So
thanks, Luke. You kind of lost probably most of us back there, but I think we can come back to it.
Okay. Well, I mean, so long as you understand what it's there for and how to use it, then that's really all that needs to be covered. But
Thanks, Luke. I love it.
yeah, it's just
I appreciate your input.
yeah, it's just how to grab stuff how to grab stuff for your project.
Thanks.
So, did anybody else have anything to add?
I think Luke's got some more.
I'm good.
All right. Let's see. Let me stop. Oops. Did I do something wrong? Okay. Awesome. So that's I guess that's all I have for now. Anybody want to do like a TechCrunch talk for next week or the week after?
I'm ready to go if anyone isn't.
Okay.
I mean, I could be ready to go whenever.
Okay.
Next week we'll do iOS apps. We'll build our first app.
Ooh.
Just make sure you have the latest version of Xcode, and we'll make something fun. I got to figure out what it will be though, but be something simple and easy. We'll get
Yes.
into like just the top level of Objective C. That's as far as we'll go.
All
Okay.
right. Well, later, yo. I
All
guess.
right.
Peace.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ginger.
No worries.
Thanks, Luke.
Thanks,
Peace
Luke.
out.
Peace.
All right. I'm out.
We'll get into like